Welcome to another edition of The Barking Dead.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of EPL on
Class is in session, hitting the books on Pub Sports.
This is another exciting edition of the main event on Talking Ant.
Class is in session for the final time. It's the season finale of Pub Sports Radio hitting the books. Believe it or not, we have ripped our way through another college football season at rapid speed as usual. It seems like the season just kicked off a few days ago. And here we are, Conor Mac, with our final Hitting the Books show of the season, part 2 of our college football bowl previews. If you missed last Monday, we hit the first half of the bowl slate, everything from this Friday, which is the first day of the bowl games, up until Tuesday, December the 27th. So this Friday up until games up to and including Tuesday, December 27th. All of those bowl games were talked about and previewed last week on the show. Today, we will be looking at the remainder of the bowl schedule, starting with the games on Wednesday, December the 28th, right until the end, including the 2 games that everybody's excited about, the college football playoff semifinals. We'll talk TCU, Michigan, and Ohio State, Georgia at the end of today's show. Conor Mac, all good things must come to an end, and here we go. Another Hitting the Books season done, our final show today.
Yeah, final one. It's been a great year, though. Shout out to you, everyone, Big Show in the back, Preston, whoever's been doing it, everyone that does the clips. Shout out to you guys that get that done. I know it's not easy, but I think it's worth it in the end, and I think we can only grow on those clips even further the next couple of years. So shout out to the team, and I'm pumped. We're here, second half. Let's get to work, brother.
Yeah, no doubt. And yeah, exactly. Thanks to everyone that's been tuning into the production show, the post-show clips, the individual game clips that have been posted after every show. Incredible viewership and numbers that we are getting with those. And we definitely thank all of you for that. It's been pretty remarkable to see just how well the show has been viewed. All right, let's make it count. Our final show, part 2 of our bowl previews. Let's get it underway. And of course, we thank everybody joining us all season long. I mean, on Monday afternoon, I know is not easy for everybody to tune into a live show, but we thank everybody that has been able to do that and join us Monday afternoons live throughout the season. All right, let's begin. Wednesday, December 28th, we have the Military Bowl. Annapolis, Maryland is the venue for this one. We have UCF taking on Duke in this matchup. Duke, now 1 point favorites, 1.5 in some spots, and the total 62.5 in this game. There's been a change of favorites because UCF actually opened a slight road favorite. Motivation, Conor Mac, don't have to question it, in my opinion, with Duke. I'm sure this is going to be an excited football team. A season that nobody really projected them to have, to be as strong as they ended up being this season. It was a great coaching job by Mike Elko. 8-4 straight up, 8-4 against the spread as well for Duke. They have been a team that I know you and I have both backed successfully on several occasions this season. They finished their regular season with a 34-31 victory over Wake Forest. UCF, on the other hand, you wonder how they're going to be treating this bowl game when you look at it, because they finished the season in a disappointing note. They lose the AAC Conference Championship game 45-28 against Tulane. And really, they were just beaten soundly start to finish. Could not stop the Green Wave offense. And the UCF offense did get going late, but they had already fallen behind by a pretty significant margin. I think when you look at this matchup, too, one thing you want to keep in mind is you should have everybody accounted for. Obviously player opt-outs, are certainly things that you're going to want to keep an eye on here as we go through the bowls. Some teams are in particular might be missing players. As far as NC State goes, too, Devin Leary has hit the transfer portal, so he's out. And now it's just going to be a question of who's going to play quarterback. It could be a bunch of different options. Chambers had some time playing. MJ Morris played a little bit for them, so we'll have to wait. Oh, that's NC State. My bad. UCF, I should say. It was Keene and Plumlee basically sharing the reps overall for the UCF Knights. So something you want to definitely keep in mind. So who will they go to at quarterback? And remember, John Reese Plumlee was a little bit banged up down the stretch of the season. So will the preparation and the time off give them a chance to be ready for the bowl game? We'll have to wait and see. And as always, Connor, with the UCF games, you want to monitor, can Duke defensively in particular stop the run? Because if you can stop the run, you can stop this UCF offense. And Duke's run defensive numbers actually not bad at all. It was really through the air where they got picked on more than they did on the ground. Duke's run defense is actually 24th in the country, just allowing 120.3 rushing yards per game. So the money's moved toward Duke, and I agree. I think Duke's the side if I'm betting this one in the Military Bowl. What do you think here, Conor Mac, UCF Duke?
That's what I wanted to touch on was UCF running the rock. Can they? This Duke team pretty good, stopping it like you mentioned, right around top 30 all year long. I think they can. I think Duke, to me right now, I'm leaning to them. You mentioned kind of the disappointment, Central Florida at the end of the year, the banged up, whether it was Plumlee. We'll see if he plays. If not, it'll be even more run heavy, even with Keene, and they run a ton with Plumlee. But he's not a great passer, but maybe he could move it on this Duke defense. Hey, right now, both these teams were good for me all year long, but I think this is Duke. I lean that way as well. This total, I think, is about right. I lean over. I'm going to wait on this total. Just the way Duke's defense, like you mentioned, at times good against the run, but they could give up some big plays, and against teams give up, and especially the last few in the 30s. So I think this game can get over. Right now, I lean over a little bit, and Duke.
Yeah, I lean over as well. If you look at UCF down the stretch, Conor Mac, their last 5 games went over the total. The Memphis game flew over the total. Both of the Tulane games went over the total. The South Florida game, they give up 39. That ended up being 46-39. The only game that stayed under was Navy, a game where both teams running the football a ton, limited possessions, time off the clock, and that's the only under for UCF down the stretch. So, which is not a surprise that game stayed under. Everything else flew over, so I would lean over the total. I do want to point out with UCF, I mentioned the opt-outs and the transfer portal. Mikey Keene's actually hit the transfer portal, so there's no way he's going to play. He's out of the program. And Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste, an outstanding linebacker who is one of the top defensive players on this UCF team, is also in the transfer portal, which means he ain't playing in this bowl game for UCF. So that loss,
he's big time too. Yeah,
that loss at the linebacker spot, losing him, Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste, you could feel that. I think he's one of the leading tacklers on the UCF defense as well. So that's not a good thing in terms of UCF winning this bowl game. So yeah, we both lean Duke. We both lean over the total here in this one. All right, next up we have the Liberty Bowl here. Kansas taking on Arkansas. This matchup in Memphis, of course, Liberty Stadium, home of the Memphis Tigers. We've got Arkansas, 3-point favorites here, 69.5 the total. The early money's come in on Kansas as Arkansas opened 5.5-point favorites down to 3. Again, we've got an excitement factor. We have a motivation factor. I ain't stepping in front of Kansas. This is a spot where the matchup you concern yourself with, this is, SEC size, strength, speed, recruiting prowess of Arkansas. I mean, they could be a little outmanned in this game, Kansas, but what they might lack in the trenches, what they might lack in those areas, they might make up for with just overall excitement for this bowl game. Whereas Arkansas, I don't know if they're going to have that same level of enthusiasm for the Liberty Bowl here as their opponent. And as we've often seen, Conor Mac, you could have a talent deficiency, you could have a recruiting deficiency against one team, but if you're the more excited football team, if you're more meticulous and preparing for the game because you're that amped up to play in it, you could still beat a team that maybe is better talent-wise than you. We've seen this for years in bowl games. So I would be very reluctant to bet against Kansas, even though you would think on paper, if you grade out the rosters, Arkansas, you would think -3 against Kansas is pretty cheap. But I think the motivation matters here. You don't play the way Kansas did. In order, they basically got their bowl game, and then of course not that they punted on the rest of the season, but the bowl game really mattered for them because they got to 6 wins, then they sputtered down the stretch, and they didn't exactly play their best. And I think part of it too is injuries mounted. This is not a team that's got a ton of depth. I think Lance Leipold's working at improving their recruiting. And also building that depth, but it's not fully there yet. And I think you saw signs of that down the stretch when they really got pushed around on defense against Texas Tech, Texas, and Kansas State in their final 3 games. But this is now time to rest up a banged up injury-riddled defense. Get ready for this bowl game. I think they're going to be very excited to play in it. Kansas hasn't been in a bowl game in a very long time. And for Arkansas, you lose your season finale against Missouri 29-27. You have a loss against Liberty, 21-19. And that's why I think Kansas is live. If you look back to that Liberty game where they're 14-point favorites, they're not excited for that game like Liberty, their opponent, was, and they lost the game outright against Liberty. So we have a comparable game here where we see Arkansas is not as fired up for one particular game as their opponent, that Liberty game. And not only did they not cover as double-digit favorites, they lost the game outright. So for me, I'm leaning with the Jayhawks side in this one. We know the total is very high. Arkansas's defense did not play great at times down the stretch. They trended toward the over. Kansas went over the total in 5 of their last 6. It's a question of value, but I'm definitely not rushing to bet an under in this game, even with the total being as high as it is, around 68.5, 69 right now. What do you think here, Connor? Liberty Bowl.
I definitely think we have points in this football game. Whether we'll get over this number, it's up there. But here's the key. What do you think what Kansas football team is going to come out here? The team first half that was unbelievable, started 6-0 or whatever it was, 5-1, and played great. I don't know. That's a long shot from there. It seems a long time ago, just a few months. That defense has just been shredded. 121st in the country. These losses were bad down the stretch. To a banged up Oklahoma State 37, 43, Texas Tech 55, 47, Kansas State. Maybe that'll change, and you're right. They're pumped up in this bowl game, but I don't buy it right now. I just think we see points here, and I kind of lean to Arkansas. I just think they're a little bit of the better team here all the way around. SEC, I think they score here on Kansas. Like you said, I just don't know if Kansas comes pumped. Maybe they do. Maybe this time off, all the time to scheme for this game, and they bring it. But everything that I've saw, I lean Arkansas, and I lean points. I think they should get, I lean their team total even over too.
Yeah, definitely. Interesting, too. There are a couple opt-outs for Arkansas, and I think that's impacted the money coming in on Kansas as well. One of their top secondary players, Miles Slusher, he has left the team as well, so that's concerning. And Barry Odom, the defensive coordinator as well for this team, is gone. He's with now the UNLV head coach. So a couple shakeups there. And like you say, when there's coaching changes and there's opt-outs and players in the transfer portal, and that's always something that's not exactly a bet-on situation for a team going into their bowl game. So, but there is, as we said, a pretty distinct personnel advantage for Arkansas. Do they match that excitement level, though, of their opponent, Kansas, for this bowl game? That's the question. All right, the Holiday Bowl next up. This is, of course, a traditional bowl game. It's one of the longer tenured bowl games. Holiday Bowl's been around for decades. San Diego is where this is played every single year. We've got the North Carolina Tar Heels and the Oregon Ducks in this one, Petco Park in San Diego. We've got Oregon 14-point favorites here, 70.5 the total in this game. Certainly it's got the potential to be an offensive spectacle between these two teams, and it'll be fascinating to see how it plays out. I do want to point out in terms of North Carolina, though, transfer portal, Storm Duck, not only a great name, but a great cornerback, one of the better ones on this North Carolina team. He's in the transfer portal, a couple others as well. Josh Downs has opted out, their outstanding wide receiver. He is not going to play in this bowl game either. Phil Longo, the offensive coordinator, is moving on to Wisconsin, where he will be the OC there. So a little bit of a coaching staff shakeup as well for North Carolina going into this bowl game. So that's concerning a little bit. I think their defense trying to slow down Oregon is equally concerning. We know the Tar Heels defense hasn't been very good much of the season, and I was very disappointed with the way they played against Clemson in the ACC championship game. No resistance whatsoever from that Tar Heels defense when it's all said and done. They've got some guys in the transfer portal as well. They've got a bunch of them, Oregon, and they did lose 2 of their last 3 games. Bo Nix was dealing with injuries that hampered his mobility, limited his mobility down the stretch. But you would think now with the time off, and this game isn't until Wednesday, December the 28th, you'd think that's going to give him time to be much better in terms of health and much closer to 100%, use that full mobility, which is what makes Bo Nix which has made him such a great quarterback this year. It's not only throwing the football, it's been able to make plays running it as well. And I don't have a strong feel for the side right now. Do I want to lay 14? Maybe, maybe not. But at the same time, North Carolina, how many stops are they going to get against Oregon? Because from all indications, Bo is going to play in this bowl game for the Oregon Ducks. So it could be tough for that really, really Swiss cheese like North Carolina defense to get stops against. Look, this will be one of the best offenses they've played all season as well. So, and the total reflects that. Obviously, we're talking 70.5, 71. I think historically the Holiday Bowl's been a high scoring bowl game. That is a high total, but where are the stops, particularly from the Tar Heels? Where are they going to come from in this game? What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, they haven't stopped anybody, it seems, all year long. The Tar Heels. One thing I do have to think, the total, I think there's points. We just have a ton here, and I still think you could get over in this one. And on the flip side, Oregon's defense, I don't think is very good either. Drake May has been good all year. That last game, he threw for 268 with Clemson, though, had a couple bad interceptions. But I think he can move it on the Ducks. Oregon, the better team, but 2 touchdowns is a ton. Both teams off disappointing losses kind of to end the year and end up here in the Holiday Bowl. But if North Carolina maybe can get a pick or something like that, because I don't see much resistance them stopping Oregon a ton in this game. But I think 2 touchdowns. I'm leaning North Carolina, and this team I don't back much all year. I think I took twice as a dog, and I always fade them as a favorite. But 2 touchdowns, I'm leaning their way with the Tar Heels here.
Yeah, definitely. I think the over. I definitely prefer. Look, I've said this all along, and I said it. Unfortunately, I also said it in the ACC championship game when I took North Carolina, and of course, they got shredded and ripped apart by Clemson. So unfortunately, we didn't win that one. But I still prefer North Carolina catching points, catching big points like this, as opposed to laying points. There's no question. But how many stops are they going to get against Oregon? We know that's been a rough defense this year for Mac Brown there in North Carolina. All right, we've got next game on the slate. This is the last game on Wednesday, December the 28th, the nightcap on that Wednesday night. Texas Bowl, Ole Miss, Texas Tech. We have Ole Miss 3.5-point favorites here, 69.5 the total. This is another total that's been hammered up, and it's difficult to some of these early bowl games you'd think are going to stay under the total, but in theory, it's difficult to make a case for some of them, quite honestly. Ole Miss is another team that, basically the entire second half of the season, their defense was fairly non-existent. Arkansas, Alabama, LSU put up big points against them. They even give up 28 to Vandy and 34 to Auburn. The last 7 games, they go 5-2 to the over. Ole Miss. We know the offense side of the football is capable with some of the weapons they have. Jackson Dart, I thought, second half of the season played a little bit better. They've, of course, got Judkins running the football, and, of course, Jonathan Mingle leading a solid receiving core here for Ole Miss as well. As far as the bowl game, it looks like nobody's opted out. Transfer portal, nobody of significance, has left the program and gone elsewhere. So no major bet against signals for Ole Miss. Texas Tech, on the other hand, looks like they should have everyone accounted for. Donovan Smith actually has hit the transfer portal, which doesn't shock me because he had basically fallen out of favor down the stretch. They gave Baron Morton a lot of starts. They gave Tyler Shuck a lot of opportunity down the stretch at quarterback. I think he had kind of fallen out of the favor or the quarterback circle, if you will, at Texas Tech. So he transferred out. Texas Tech, to me, definitely, I think with this new head coach, they had Joey McGuire. They had a solid year. They finished the season strong. So from a momentum standpoint, you'd probably have to say Texas Tech has it more than Ole Miss. Ole Miss went 1-4 straight up, 1-4 against the spread down the stretch, 1-4-1 against the spread down the stretch. And Texas Tech 3-0 straight up, 3-0 against the spread to wrap up the season, beating Kansas, beating Iowa State, and then a win against Oklahoma in overtime in their season finale. So money's come in here on Texas Tech just slightly, 4 down to 3.5. I'd probably lean to them, Red Raiders here, more than a field goal. Certainly not in a hurry to lay more than a field goal with Ole Miss, considering the defensive warts this team showed much of the second half of the campaign. What do you think here, Texas Bowl, C-Mac?
This is another interesting one in these bowl games where this much weight will these teams come out and will you see some defense, or you just see a shootout? And Ole Miss, both teams can get into a shootout. I thought Texas Tech at times their defense played a little bit better, but Ole Miss got shredded there at the end of the year. This team couldn't stop much of anybody. It was real rough, but both offenses are very good here. I banked on Tech at the end of the year. I think they're a little bit of the better team here, and getting over a field goal is the way to look. I'll probably look at it money line as well. I think it's just a key of which team gets the stops here, because I think both offenses move it. And I lean Tech. I think they get done.
Baron Morton is on the injury report, questionable too. And now, of course, Donovan Smith transferred out. So the point I'm trying to make is more than likely it's going to be Tyler Shuck that ends up being the quarterback here.
As long as he stays in the game.
Yeah. Exactly. What happens if, Smith's transferred out, Morton's hurt? What if he's not available? And then what happens if Tyler Shuck gets injured in that game? What ends up happening if you're at Texas Tech? So you're a little thin now in terms of your quarterback rotation, but maybe you won't have to worry. Shuck can get through the game on Wednesday night, December the 28th. Yes, Justin, we should mention that. Mike Leach is one of my favorites in college football for years. I mean, the guy's hilarious. If you listen to any of his press conferences, he's off the cuff. He's quirky, a bit of an oddball, but he is. And one thing you can't question is he knows offense, and he is the innovator of the air raid offense that you've seen in college football, basically plagiarized by other coaches. And very, very disheartening to hear about him being hospitalized, him basically being in critical condition. Like, he is literally fighting for his life right now, Mike Leach. And to think of the college football world without him is a very depressing thought. So definitely, Conor Mac, thoughts and prayers to his family right now, and to Mike Leach. Hopefully he fights this, gets back on his feet again, and survives this. But definitely, we're all hoping for good things. This has been one of the best coaches, most entertaining. He always gives you something unique in the press conference. Not the same old shit, not the same old standard paint by numbers, boring answers. He always gives you something, a little bit different, a little exciting, entertaining. So, Mike Leach, we wish you well. Hopefully you battle back and get your way back through this.
Definitely. Hopefully he kicks out. I got to think he does all right. He's just, critical condition. I like to think he had a bad heart attack or something, but there's no word even on that.
No, so we wish him all the best. No doubt about that. All right, let's go to Thursday, December 29th. We've got 3 bowl games taking place that day. We'll start in the Bronx, Yankee Stadium, Pinstripe Bowl, Minnesota, Syracuse. We've got Minnesota 7.5 point road favorites in this game. The total 42.5 here, pretty much across the board right now. Low total, as you would expect with Minnesota in particular. I mean, the Minnesota Golden Gophers, to say they set offenses back a few decades down the stretch, probably accurate. I mean, this is definitely a team that's had, their share of struggles on that side of the football throughout the college football season. Really, it's a team that all year, they rely so heavily on running the football, and when they can't do that, it really makes it difficult for them to move the football. No question about that. We'll see how they fare here in the bowl game against Syracuse. Syracuse was really never the same after losing their first game of the year. Remember, they started the year undefeated, including wins against Purdue and NC State, and then they lost to Clemson their first game of the year. They were never the same after that. They blown out by Notre Dame, lose by 10 at Pitt, blown out by Florida State, lose by 10 at Wake Forest, and then they do have a win in their finale, 32-23 against Boston College. Did not, though, cover the number in that game. This still feels like a lot of points to be laying with a very pedestrian, at times, Minnesota offense. And when you look at the Syracuse Orange defense, the concern, though, would be the run defense, which is far worse, I guess, for Syracuse than the pass defense. And Minnesota, just doesn't throw the football a ton. And Tanner Morgan as well, their quarterback, does have an upper body injury, so we'll have to wait and see if he is going to be available for this game. Well, he might not be. And the backup quarterbacks were very rough for Minnesota, so keep an eye on that, his status going into this game. But definitely the run defense is concerning for Syracuse, and obviously Minnesota is going to look to run the football quite a bit. That's their number one way of moving the football, that run first, run heavy offense. As far as the bowl game is concerned here, it looks like, we're going to have to, like I said, we're going to have to wait and see on Morgan with the head injury. Kali Akmanis is not someone I really trust at the backup quarterback spot. Minnesota did finish the season strong. And the one thing you want to pay attention to is coaches with a good bowl track record. PJ Fleck perfect 3-0 against the spread in bowl games. You want to pay attention to those to those head coaches, that have a very good bowl track record, and PJ Fleck does have it. So it's probably a game I'm going to pass more than likely as we get closer to kickoff, unless I find out some kind of news in terms of an opt-out or an injury situation that impacts my decision one way or another. But the bowl track record is strong for Fleck. I just don't know if I want to lay this many points with Minnesota, even though in theory, if you look at the stats, they should have success running the football against a shaky Syracuse run defense. What do you think here, Connor? Pinstripe Bowl.
Yeah, that run defense kind of just got worn down as the year went on, too. It just got a little bit worse and worse. And Abraham, they're going to run it a ton. I mean, you got to think he gets at least 120 yards in this game. At quarterback position, Morgan or not, it doesn't matter who's back there. They can't throw it even with him. I mean, they just struggle in that regard. The defense, I thought, played well at the end of the year. Obviously, they're just playing Wisconsin, Iowa, Northwestern, Nebraska, those last few. But, Schrader looked better and all this time off. Maybe that'll help him. That last game against, was Boston College. They still won it. So maybe rest will help him out here. I'm leaning Syracuse, but I like the under here. I just run it slow. Syracuse offense, I don't think it's great. And Minnesota's defense, I thought was good, over the year. At sometimes a better in some games than others, but I think they'll make this and just do a low-scoring one. So I like the under and lean the points to Syracuse.
We might have to, and plus we might see Del Rio Wilson once again at quarterback for Syracuse because Garrett Schrader did not play down the stretch, and who knows if he'll be ready to go for the bowl game with his.
He played that last game though, right? In the BC game.
The BC game. Let me just. I think he.
I thought I saw you.
Might have. Let
me
just
remember
double check on that because he's been banged up down the stretch. Yeah, yes, he did. Very good, Conor Mac. Yeah, Garrett Schrader did play. So, but yet they've got him listed as questionable here for the bowl game. So take that for what it's worth. But again, this is a long way away still. So this is definitely something you want to follow up on closer to a kickoff, whether it's Del Rio Wilson or Schrader at quarterback. And by the way, Dino Babers is actually undefeated ATS in bowl games as well. So can't just give PJ Fleck praise for having a good bowl betting track record as a head coach. Dino actually has a good one as well for Syracuse. So we'll see if that comes in. So it's basically two coaches. Someone's got to fail to cover. Both of these coaches are undefeated ATS in bowl games. So someone is finally going to fail to back or cover for their backers here in this Pinstripe Bowl with Minnesota and Syracuse. All right, Cheez-It Bowl next up. Oklahoma and Florida State in Orlando, Camping World Stadium. We've got Florida State 7.5-point favorites, 65-66 being the total in this game. Florida State was one of the teams down the stretch that was playing some of their best football, no question. It was very impressive to see the finish to the season from Florida State. There are a couple players that have hit the transfer portal in the secondary, Sam McCall, Sidney Williams. But Florida State ended the season very, very strong, winning their last 5 games, 5-0 straight up, 4-1 against the spread. We talked about two coaches in the last game, Minnesota-Syracuse, where Fleck and Dino Babers have good bowl track records, ATS, not Mike Norvell for Florida State. Winless against the spread in bowl games. So he has not done well here in bowl games in the past, something maybe you do want to keep in the back of your mind if you're considering laying the 7.5 here with the Seminoles in this game. As far as the matchup goes, this is Brent Venables, his first year, which has obviously been a tumultuous one. I mean, 6-6 is not the kind of season Oklahoma expects, but yet that's what they had this year, thanks to a defense that, for the most part, this season was just absolutely pathetic. 120 in the country, total yards allowed, 108th in the country in both passing yards per game and rushing yards per game allowed. So it's one of those games where you've got to think Florida State's got a good chance to do whatever they want offensively. We just saw Oklahoma, by the way, give up 51 in their season finale. That lost to Texas Tech as well. So it's just been a rough year defensively. It's for a guy that's a defensive-minded head coach in Brent Venables. That's his background. You've got to think that's disappointing, and you just got to hope that maybe when he gets more of his starters on defense, more of his recruits in there, you're going to see it improve as time goes on. But as far as this bowl game goes, I think Florida State was the side I'm eyeing. I got to admit, I'd lean to lay in the points in spite of that Norvell 0-4 ATS bowl track record, but that track record does bother me. laying more than a touchdown, a coach that clearly has a past history of failing to get it done, at least from a point spread perspective in bowl games. But total definitely seems reasonable. I think Florida State can get theirs. And I think Oklahoma can score too. Let's not forget that as bad as their defense has been this year, the offense is certainly a capable group. No question about that. And when you look at it in terms of this bowl game, Eric Gray has opted out. That's the main loss, but looks like everybody's healthy. Dylan Gabriel is expected to play in this bowl game at quarterback. So I think there's a reason to expect the Sooners to put up points as well. So the over could get there in this one. Plus the heat and humidity of Florida in December. I know it's December, but the humidity can get really bad there in the late or in the winter months as well. You kind of feel it even more sometimes than you do in the summer. So the over could get there as the defenses wear down late in the game. What do you think here, Connor? Oklahoma, Florida State.
Yeah, I got to lean a little bit here to Florida State. I think the most improved, their offense was good with Travis came back, but I thought their defense played really, really well down the stretch. I know the Florida game got into a back and forth, and that might happen here in this bowl game. I think there'll be some points. Oklahoma, on the other hand, just a rough year. Seems like just kind of a throwaway. See if Venables can do anything going forward from recruiting and that. I don't love this because I don't love it's over a touchdown here. With Florida State, you mentioned the track record too with Norvell. So yeah, I'm off this early too. Another thing, Oklahoma in one-score games weren't good this year. I was going through that last night. I think they were 0-5. And I don't know how they stopped Florida State's running game here. So if you can get over that touchdown, I mean, it's Florida State here, for me right now or nothing.
Yeah, I want to put the defensive improvement of Florida State down the stretch in a little bit of context. I don't want to say it was phony, but
yeah, who they played.
The defensive improvement, look, Georgia Tech, 16 points. Georgia Tech, we know, struggled offensively much. Miami, terrible this year, an offensive disappointment. Syracuse, that was down the stretch when Del Rio Wilson was in, Schrader was injured, and they were falling apart. ULL's not got a great offense. And then they faced Florida and they got ripped apart. And don't forget, Clemson put 34 on the board against Florida State. So no, there's no doubt the defense did get better, but a lot of it was who they played. Weak offenses, weak football teams, weak quarterbacks. So they're not facing that here. I think Oklahoma with Gabriel, that's a capable unit. They can move the ball probably in this one. All right, let's go to the next game on the slate here. It is Washington taking on Texas, the Alamo Bowl taking place, of course, San Antonio, Texas here. Our home base, if you will, of Pub Sports Radio. Always an exciting bowl game, usually the Alamo Bowl. We got an interesting matchup here. Washington and Texas. Texas 5.5 point favorites, 68.5 the total in this one. I mean, I kind of think with Texas being bet up here, 5.5 in this one, I understand there's been this love affair in the betting markets all year. For the Texas Longhorns. And I don't know what it is. It's just the name brand program, if you will, whether it's they love Bijan Robinson, they love Sark, they love Quinn Ewers, the quarterback, whatever the case may be, though. They've taken money in a lot of games here. But I'm still reluctant to lay points with Texas, and especially when you're talking about a very, very potent Washington passing game. And I think that's going to be something that concerns me here because the Texas secondary was hands down the weaker link of the Longhorn defense all season. They were very good stopping the run. They were not so good against the pass. And that is what Washington does offensively. Washington doesn't run the football a ton. It's basically Michael Penix Jr. through the air to a great slew of receivers. It's a very good passing game. It's also very well coordinated under Kalen DeBoer, who's done a great job here coming into Washington in year one. So keep that in mind. And plus, there's a concern that Bijan Robinson hasn't been ruled out yet, but there's a concern that he might opt out, and play it safe with the NFL draft around the corner. And that's obviously one of the biggest weapons that the Longhorns have on the offensive side of the football. As far as Washington goes, it looks like he's not Michael Penix Jr. is not opting out. He's never played in a bowl game. He wants to play in one, so expect him to play. Nobody's opted out yet. They're a relatively healthy football team. I think just from a match, I think they're excited for this bowl game just because of the fact that, it's a Washington team coming off a dreadful year. I think they're just happy to be in any bowl game considering the year they had last year before Kalen DeBoer got here. So I know the money's come in on Texas. Wouldn't be my money In fact, now that it's gone up, I'm more interested in Washington, especially with that critical matchup advantage. They're a very good passing team, passing offense, and the secondary for Texas is by far the weak link of their defense. So that could play into the favor of the Washington Huskies here. What do you think, Conor Mac, Alamo Bowl?
I think it will. I think they'll be able to move it. But on the flip side, I think Texas, no matter who's in, Robinson is key, obviously, to be in this game to run it. But Washington gives them up in chunks, too. Their defense not very good, especially against the pass. So Texas should be able to move it here with ease. I have nothing much, though, on this game early. I'm going to wait. I don't know if I want to pull the trigger with Washington because I don't know if they can get a ton of stops, but I think they can move it with Penix. So I slightly lean over, but we got a high total here. So this was one I had question marks all, I was going through it the last couple of days.
Next up, we got a lot of games on Friday, December 30th. It is a busy day, the eve of New Year's Eve, if you will. And we'll start with the Mayo Bowl on Friday, December 30th. Maryland and NC State in Charlotte, North Kakalaki. Maryland 1.5-point favorites here, 47.5, 48 being the total in this game. Of course, for NC State, they played the quarterback shuffle, down the stretch of the regular season. No question about that. Devin Leary got injured, and now he's transferred out, of course, of the program. So where this team goes at quarterback here in the bowl game is anyone's guess. MJ Morris, there's hints that he may be transferring out as well, although that's not been confirmed yet. Ben Finley, who I believe is a freshman, ended up starting the game against North Carolina in the finale. Look, it's and he, of course, up and down were his numbers this season for the Wolfpack. 67% completion. He wasn't actually that bad in the game against North Carolina. 2 touchdown passes, 271 passing yards. He actually did show you a decent arm. Ben Finley. Does he start? Does Jack Chambers? I hope it's not Jack Chambers, because anytime he got in there, that NC State offense just ground to a halt. He was not very good at all. So it could be more. I think it's going to be more than likely Morris or Finley. But with these rumors going around that Morris might transfer out like Leary did, we might see Finley again. And Finley, like I said, he didn't play that bad against North Carolina down the stretch in that final game of the season in the rivalry game. So definitely keep your eye on who's going to be at quarterback. For Maryland on their side of the equation, of course, this is a team that, offensively, that has always been their strength. Looks like little Tua Talia Tagovailoa is going to be available here. It looks like Deshaun Jones, Ty Felton, the receivers. They got all hands on deck here for this bowl game, which to me indicates that the team is locked in, that they're excited, that they're going to put their best foot forward here in this bowl game. I'd probably lean to Maryland a little bit, but you also have to factor in the location, Charlotte. It'll be more closer of a home game environment probably for NC State than it is for Maryland. But I do lean Terps. Total might be a little light. Like, we don't see many lower totals here, but we're talking a pretty capable Maryland offense. And if Finley plays a quarterback, he showed against North Carolina the offense, he can move it when he is under center for the Wolfpack. So maybe I get there with the over, but probably only if I get the news that Finley's in or Morris. Morris can be capable. Anyone, ABC, anyone but Chambers. And I might be looking at this over for NC State at the quarterback spot in this game. What do you think here, Connor? Mayo Bowl.
I think Finley has got to go. Yeah, and it's just a wait and see here. But I think Maryland should be pretty pumped for this game. The good old Mayo Bowl. Offensively, always pretty solid here. Key is NC State on the defensive side of the ball was pretty good. They had some games where the defense throughout, down the stretch made not so great, but top 20 all year, turnover margin. And as long as if Tua's take care, no picks or anything here, I think Maryland can win this game. But a couple of interceptions, fumbles, I think NC State, could win this game. Total coin flip for me. I had nothing here and nothing on the total right now, at least. We got a ways out till this one to move on. Maybe it is light, but right now I'm off.
All right. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. I will say this was not the NC State defense. The NC State defense was okay, but they definitely didn't play as well as I thought. But they still have it looks like on that side of the ball, better numbers than Maryland. So if you're looking for in a close game, you are getting a slight underdog price with the better defense here with NC State. So it is something to keep in mind. You know, those defensive dogs, sometimes worth a look. All right, Tony the Tiger, Sun Bowl. Here we go. Pittsburgh and UCLA, El Paso, Texas. We've got UCLA 6-point favorites here, 57.5 being the total in this game. UCLA this close, you know, to being in the Pac-12 championship game, maybe even being in the Rose Bowl. And now all of a sudden, they're not there. And this was a team I was concerned about whether everybody was going to end up playing in this bowl game. But it looks like DTR, Bobo, Charbonnet, a lot of the big offensive players on this Bruins team are practicing as if they're going to be in the bowl game. So we haven't heard anything from the Bruins in terms of people sitting out. And the money's come in on UCLA, which is probably an indicator that looks like everybody's going to be suiting up in this game, including Dorian Thompson-Robinson in his final game as a college quarterback here with the UCLA Bruins. You know, if UCLA is motivated, I don't think I'd want to step in front of them. And I don't know if I'd want to step in front of them with the Pitt Panthers, who, look, down the stretch, they actually played great. They won 4 in a row, 3-1 ATS during that span, but they beat a down-and-out Syracuse team. They beat a horrible Virginia team. And to be honest with you, it was 2 pick sixes at the beginning of that game, which actually makes that score less impressive. Duke was a back and forth. They won. And then Miami, you know, brutal season. I don't think you can go crazy about them winning that one, 42-16. This is a big step up for this Pitt defense if they face UCLA, with UCLA having all their players playing and suiting up in this game on offense, because start to look at the way Pitt played on defense against some of the better offenses on their schedule. They had some ugly ones. That North Carolina game stands out. They gave up 42 points in that game to Drake May and the Tar Heels. That's not good. They gave up 34 points to Tennessee in the second week of the season. They gave up 31 to West Virginia. So the better teams on offense all moved the ball against Pitt, and UCLA right there is one of the best offenses that Pat Narduzzi's Pitt team has probably seen all year. So this one I would wait on, but if UCLA is playing, you know, I wouldn't be looking to step in front of the favorite here. What do you think, Conor Mac, son?
Yeah, just wait a little bit on who's to go, but best over team the last 2 years for me. I mean, ATS too. I think UCLA. It just seemed like their games, every game, just got over the total. And there's the key. I thought the Pitt defense got better as the year went on, but you mentioned you're playing Syracuse, Virginia, Miami, pretty bad teams. But they got into some shootouts against better offenses. So I go right to the over here. I think UCLA scores. UCLA doesn't have a great defense. I think Pitt, Slovis, this offense can move the ball. So I lean to this over already. And, man, I'd like to have more than a touchdown here with Pitt. But I think Pitt's in this ballgame. I got to roll with the dog here. A little bit better defense, and they can hang tight within this one score. So, yeah, I like Pitt in the points and lean over.
All right, next up, we've got the Gator Bowl, South Carolina, Notre Dame. This one on that Friday, December 30th as well. We've got Notre Dame 2.5 point favorites here, 52 the total. I jumped on South Carolina right away. It's actually one of the first bowl bets I made, and unfortunately now the number is below a field goal. I still think they could win the game outright, South Carolina. Notre Dame's got some personnel issues going into this bowl game. The quarterback who played most of their games down the stretch, Drew Pine, has hit the transfer portal. He's not there anymore. He won't play in this game. And Michael Mayer, of course, as you would expect, you know, this guy's going to have one hell of an NFL career, we think, as a tight end. He's that good. He's opting out. He's not playing in this bowl game. He's getting ready for the draft. So that means quarterback and probably your best weapon, at least in the passing game on offense, not going to play, which means it's going to be Tyler Buckner and Steve Angeli that are going to end up being the quarterback here for Notre Dame in this bowl game. Buckner never impressed me. That's why Drew Pine started those games after the early part of the season, because Buckner didn't show really enough quality. And then Angeli is someone that obviously has very little experience. So there's some opt-out issues for Notre Dame. That's something that would concern me a bit. And as for South Carolina, you know, excitement level to be in a bowl game, I think, is there. I love the way they finished the season down the stretch, including that incredible performance there. Two incredible performances down the stretch by the South Carolina Gamecocks against Tennessee and Clemson. I mean, what a way to finish your season. What a way to put a capper on an 8-4 regular season if you're Shane Beamer with just two outstanding performances down the stretch. So this is a team with some big-time momentum. And look, we've ripped on Spencer Rattler and his consistency at times, but he was terrific in those two victories. I mean, talk about saving. Where was that all season? There's been some games I'm like, what the hell? He's playing awful. And then he's ripping apart Tennessee and Clemson defenses the last 2 weeks of the season. Where the hell did all that come from all of a sudden? Why couldn't that have been the Spencer Rattler that we got on a consistent basis all year? But no, I think the money is right in terms of where it's moving. It opened 5 down to 2. It's gone on South Carolina. I agree. I think definitely above a field goal was a great bet, I thought, on South Carolina. I still think it's a good bet now because I think they can win the game outright. What do you think here, Connor? South Carolina, Notre Dame?
I think so too. Just the key for me here is Ritter, like you talked about. I keep remembering all his bad games, even though he was so good. It just seems like a long enough layoff here, he could revert back to that. But I'm not running really to Notre Dame as a favorite. You mentioned quarterback being out. Mayer, I thought, is huge. The only receiver they got the ball to. They'll still be able to run it, and their defense, I think, will be okay in this game. Total's interesting, too. I have nothing on this early on as well. South Carolina moved it so well in those last few games. It went over. But I think this Notre Dame defense could come up to play. So nothing on the total, but I'm right with you here. To me, it's South Carolina or pass right now.
All right, should be interesting there in that one. And, that one game actually could be an under because Notre Dame, is definitely going to try to, I think, take the air out of the football. South Carolina might as well. And does the time off throw off the rhythm of the South Carolina offense all of a sudden?
Yeah.
Something you do want to keep in mind.
Real quick, and in Jacksonville, Florida,
Yeah.
Easy trip for should be South Carolina fans. I mean, of course, Notre Dame fans come anywhere, but, this isn't the bowl game they want to be in.
No doubt. All right, we've got the Arizona Bowl, and this is a Barstool production. Like Barstool sponsors it. It's going to be like a Barstool broadcast, kind of like they did in college basketball early. Remember last month they did that Barstool Invitational? They had their own production of the broadcast. Same thing here with this Arizona Bowl. Wyoming and Ohio in Tucson. We've got Ohio 1.5 point favorites, 43 the total in this one. Obviously, we know Curtis Rourke out for the season, injured, torn ACL. We know it's going to be C.J. Harris at quarterback, and he showed you a little something in the Bowling Green game, but he showed you even more in the Toledo game and in the MAC championship, and it wasn't really all that good, at least in terms of throwing the football. He's definitely got some athleticism, but man, he's going to have to improve in terms of throwing that football. I get concerned a little bit here about Ohio. You lose the MAC championship game. This is, a bit of a disheartening loss to Toledo. Curtis Rourke, your all-world quarterback, is out, for the season. Can we trust this passing game to work against Wyoming's defense? I'm not so sure. And when you look at Wyoming going into this bowl game, it's one of those teams that, down the stretch, we saw that defense get better. It looks like, unfortunately, though, there are some things you do get a little worried about from a opt-out standpoint. Transfer portal, I should say. Titus Swen, we know how good he was at running back for Wyoming this year. He carried the offense at times because the quarterback play was so spotty. Titus Swen's hit the transfer portal. So, that definitely is concerning for Wyoming. So much of their offense was around him and running the football. So hopefully whoever's going to be the backup running back here in this game, it looks like it's going to go to both DQ James and DeWyan McNeely. Going to end up being the two players taken up in the absence of Swen at running back. Hopefully they can produce because the run game was certainly important to any offensive success Wyoming had. But, Wyoming did win 4 of their last 6 games. A lot of the wins were against the weaker teams, New Mexico, Utah State, Hawaii, Colorado State, but they were competitive against Boise State, and then they ran into Fresno on a bad day after a tough loss to Boise. I think they just didn't have anything in the tank after just a real tough loss. They gave it their all against Boise in that 3-point loss, and they just couldn't rebound. They couldn't get off the mat for that, get up off the mat for that Fresno State game in their finale. You look at, by the way, coaches with good bowl track records. And by the way, this is going to be the first bowl game for the new Ohio head coach who took over from Frank Solich. But Craig Bowl, 11-3 against the spread in bowl games. Year after year after year, Craig Bowl has been a very, very good bowl head coach. His teams have been good in these bowl games at Wyoming over the years. So I haven't bet it yet, but I'm certainly leaning to the Wyoming side in this game. Conor Mac, what do you think?
This is Wyoming, I think, here. The no Rourke, Harris, he can't get it done. He's athletic, but he can't throw it. And Wyoming will smother him. As you mentioned, pretty good defense throughout the year, even their schedule that they played. And you mentioned the backup running. Whoever's in there, they'll be able to run it, in this one. Wyoming, not a high-flying scoring team, so they just run it. They only average 20 points a game, 112th in the country. They win this game here, and I lean under. Ohio's defense isn't great. Wyoming seems like they could get maybe 3 touchdowns, and if they play like that Toledo defense isn't good, and Wyoming's better than them. If there's a little repeat of that, this game will stay under.
I agree. I mean, it's a low total, but it's low for a reason. And I find in college football, the lowest totals more often than not go under. The highest totals more often than not go over. And I think this one could be real low scoring. 20-17 for somebody would not shock me in the least in this game. All right. Next up, as we continue along here, we've got the Gator Bowl here in this one. This is the Orange Bowl here. Hard Rock Stadium, Orange Bowl. Clemson taking on Tennessee. This should be a good one here with the Orange Bowl. Miami Gardens, Florida, Hard Rock Stadium. Clemson 5.5, 6.5 point favorites here in this one. Total 63-64, pretty much across the board. Money has come in on Clemson a little bit. We know Hendon Hooker's out for the season due to injury. Josh Heupel's offensive coordinator went to South Florida, where he became the head coach there. It looks like the great receiver, Jalen Hyatt, might opt out. We'll have to see if he does or not. So that means Joe Milton, the Michigan transfer who finished the season at quarterback for Tennessee, he's going to be the starting quarterback here in this game against Clemson. So there are some concerns here, with this Tennessee squad. Now, the question in terms of who's going to suit up and all of that, but at the same time, am I rushing to lay points with Clemson? Hell no. Not in this spot. This is not the kind of bowl game. I mean, the Orange Bowl should be exciting. It's still a New Year's 6 bowl game, but they're used to being in the playoff scenario and in the playoff picture. They're not. And, down the stretch, DJ Uiagalelei, of course, is transferred out of Clemson. We knew that was going to happen. The writing was on the wall as Dabo put Cade Klubnik in the final game. And look, there looks like there could be at least a few opt-outs here in terms of Clemson in the bowl game, but we'll have to wait and see. Nothing's been announced yet, but look out for a couple on the D-line, including Miles Murphy, Brian Breesy, who is, again, a guy that's gone through some personal tragedy this year as well. Those could be big components missing in that Clemson defense. I want to kind of take Tennessee here plus the points, but, we're going to have to wait and see who's going to be on the field for them. Hyatt still could opt out. They've got to shake up in their coaching staff. Like I said, the OC departed for South Florida. And then Clemson still could have some opt-outs. This is one of those where, and a lot of times with these New Year's 6 bowl games that are not the playoff games, we've seen it in years past. There's opt-outs announced like 2 or 3, 4 days right before the game. So this could be one of those, stay tuned, see if anyone's going to drop out. And if not, then make your decision from there. But right now, the initial lean is Tennessee. What do you think here, Connor? Orange Bowl.
Yeah, this is a wait and see here. Numbers, I think, spot on. I'd like to be over a touchdown. Then I'd start looking at Tennessee. Even with Milton at quarterback, I think you move it. Other than that South Carolina, where the 63 points, I thought Tennessee's defense took a good step forward, for the most of the year. I thought they played well all year long. Goose egg against Vandy, Missouri had 24. Georgia was only 27-13. Yeah, so I lean Tennessee here. Klubnik's very good. He's a quarterback of the future. The Clemson defense been hit and miss. You talked about their secondary a few times. Can they exploit that, Tennessee here? We will see. But, yeah, waiting all these guys, who's in, who's out. But initially here, almost that touchdown, kind of lean Tennessee. And I like Clemson over North Carolina, just a couple weeks ago. But get a touchdown. I like the Vols here, and there should be some points. But maybe this total's too high. So that's a wait, too, for me. On the total in this game.
Yeah, so definitely, this is now Cade Klubnik's Clemson team, and obviously he'll be the starting quarterback next year
Oh yeah.
for them as well. This has officially become his team. Of course, DJU on to hopefully for him greener pastures, but obviously we'll have to wait and see on that. All right, we move to New Year's Eve now, Saturday, December 31st, Music City Bowl. It is Iowa and Kentucky. Nashville, Tennessee, Iowa 2.5 point favorites, 31-31.5 being the total in this game. I mean, look at that total. Pretty much tells you all you need to know that it's going to be tough to find consistent offense here. Will Levis has opted out of the bowl game. Chris Rodriguez, the great running back, has opted out. And you know what's funny is pass the Cavoisier Smoke, the backup running back for Kentucky's also. Well, he hasn't opted out. He's hit the transfer portal. So this is now going to be a very thin offense. I mean, your top two running backs are out, your quarterback's out, which means Kaya Sharon is going to be the quarterback here for Kentucky. Not someone with a boatload of experience. The last time we saw him, he played against South Carolina a little bit, 15 of 27. That was the game that Levis missed against South Carolina, and they didn't win that game either. 15 of 27, 56% completions. Not exactly great throwing the football. It's going to be tough to envision him moving the football and putting up points in bunches against this Iowa defense. But you can say the same thing about Iowa's offense. We know we don't really can count on them to move the football. And the one thing about Kentucky is strength of this team most of the year has been defense, and especially down the stretch, Connor. To hold Georgia to 16 points and hold Louisville to 13 points, they played really good defense at the end of the season. They ended the season going 7 straight unders, 7-0 to the under. In their last 7 games, and the last 2 games they only got to 19 and 29 or 19 total points, or 22 rather total points against Georgia, 39 against Louisville. And I know this is lower at 31, but I still think this game could actually stay under, honestly, as crazy as it is to say. I mean, I just don't know where the offense and where the finishing off drives and with touchdowns, where it's going to come from either side. Iowa's offenses struggled down the stretch. They put up 17-13 in their last 2 games. Kentucky's defense is good, so definitely a low total, but I don't know if I could trust these offenses. And remember, I've taken these Iowa overs at times before 31, and it still ended up staying under. So I'm probably going to leave this game alone, side and total. Anything here for you, C-Mac, with the Music City Bowl?
I don't know. Both teams, is Goodson, he's not going to play, right, for Iowa? I mean, even the Kentucky receivers you already mentioned, Rodriguez out, Ali, Epps, I don't think they go. I don't know how these teams, their offense, the few guys that they had at these positions, receiver, aren't going to play. Both really good defenses. I still think it goes under, which is just, I can't believe this is 31. And I still think it goes under. Hey, that Army, it was going to go under again. Overtime got that baby over. Whoever had the over in that game, Army, Navy. But defensive slugfest here. I guess I was a dog. I lean their way. But I don't want to back Spencer Petras, really. I get, in the end. So, yeah, off.
Yeah, by the way, I should point out Iowa's quarterback situation's in a disastrous – well, they don't have a good quarterback usually anyway, but Spencer Petras is out. He's got an arm injury. He's not playing. His backup that did play a little bit this year, Alex Padilla, transferred out. He's in the transfer portal. So we're looking at Joe Labas as the quarterback here for Labas, the quarterback here for Iowa. Joe Labas, and he hasn't thrown a pass, I believe, since he's been at Iowa. So that's what we're looking at here for the Hawkeyes at quarterback for this game.
Both teams. So all the quarterbacks gone. Their running backs and the receivers are out. It seems like all their ones. So
tough one. That means tough to trust either offense to move the ball. That's for sure in this one. All right, Sugar Bowl now. Caesars Superdome in New Orleans. Unique start time. We don't normally see the Sugar Bowl before New Year's Day, but this one is because of the NFL being on a Sunday this year. So they've had to put the Sugar Bowl on New Year's Eve this year, noon Eastern on New Year's Eve. Kansas State, Alabama. Alabama opened 5.5 point favorites down to 3.5 now, 54 being the total in this game. There's a lot of, sentiment in the betting markets that is concerned about Alabama here because of, opt-out possibilities, transfer portal, excitement level for a team that's used to competing in the playoffs and for national championships, not being in the Sugar Bowl necessarily. And that's probably why a lot of the early money has come in on Kansas State, the Big 12 champions, of course, who knocked off TCU in the Big 12 championship game to get this Sugar Bowl opportunity. And when you look at Alabama right now, they've got a bunch of guys that hit the transfer portal. Trey Sanders, the running back, Christian Leary, wide receiver, Trayshawn Holden, wide receiver. So a bunch of guys have hit the JoJo Earl, injured in the Iron Bowl, something you want to keep in mind. Basically, it's going to be really, really contingent upon who suits up and who doesn't opt out in terms of how excited and enthused and prepared Alabama is going to be to win this game, because there's still some whispers out there that Bryce Young may opt out, the quarterback, Will Anderson, the all-world defensive end, who's probably going to dominate at the next level, could opt out. Jordan Battle, the safety, Malachi Moore at cornerback. I mean, there's a bunch of guys contemplating opting out here in this bowl game, and we won't know that until closer to the game day. So it's one of those wait and see. It's hard to give an opinion right now, because all things considered, talent-wise, roster-wise, if these were two teams at full strength, Alabama would be dirt cheap at -3 against Kansas State. But that may not be the case. They might be and keep in mind too, another thing you want to factor in with Alabama, even though you'd be concerned, let's say Young and some of these guys opt out, most of these positions, Conor Mac, the players that are opting out, get replaced by 4 or 5-star recruits. So it's not like you're putting a stiff in there and a guy that can't play, or a guy that's not very capable, very talented, not when you're Alabama. So keep that in mind, that even though they might have some second and third string players in there at multiple positions, those are 5-star recruits in a lot of instances. So capable players. So it's a wait and see for me on this one. Connor, what do you think, Sugar Bowl?
Just, you mentioned the question marks, but if they play, this line will move. But with Bama's been this prize, they've played well, as a low favorite like this cheap the last few years. So I think Bama's better in the end, but too many question marks. And maybe this just means more to K-State. Alabama doesn't want to be here. I mean, in the end, they wanted to be in the playoff. And still, that defense is very good, but they got beat at times against some pretty good offenses, as we saw this year. So just too tough here. I just have nothing this early on it. I love how Kansas State played all year. I love them, to get to TCU that we talked about last week. And I do think they're in this game, though. I think this should be a pretty good football game. I think they can hang around. So if I had more points, and maybe it'll change with news, I'd be on Kansas State.
All right, yeah, definitely a wait-and-see approach here with this one, Sugar Bowl, on New Year's Eve, based on who may or may not play. All right, we are going to go next up to the Cotton Bowl. It is the ReliaQuest Bowl. First of all, Mississippi State and Illinois. This game is on Monday, January the 2nd. We've got Illinois 1.5 2-point favorites, 46 being the total. Raymond James Stadium in Tampa. Used to be the Outback Bowl. So we have a sponsor change here with the now it's the ReliaQuest Bowl here in Tampa Bay. Obviously, the Mississippi State situation, we've got a coaching situation here. Yeah, their coach is in the hospital fighting for his life right now. That's the situation. And obviously, Mike Leach, and we're going to have to wait and see if he pulls through this. And even if he does, is he going to coach in the bowl game? He's probably going to need time to recover from this. It was a very severe heart attack, very severe, like a big one from all indications. So how's that going to impact the focus, the mindset? Obviously, these players are probably worried as fuck right now about their head coach and his health, and whether he's going to pull through this. But definitely that puts a new wrinkle into this bowl game. Illinois is 1.5 2-point favorites. I think from an excitement standpoint, Illinois is excited because they've had some bad years. That one of their best seasons in a long time, 8-4. Great season for Brett Bielema and his team. I think they'll be enthused to keep it going here against Mississippi State. And I think when you look at this particular matchup, Chase Brown and the run game should work. When Illinois can run the football successfully, that's when they're effective. And I think, when you look at this game, they should be able to run the ball with Chase Brown. The Mississippi State run defense isn't great. So my early lean is definitely Illinois, and it might be accentuated by the fact that there's some concerns off the field with the health of Mike Leach right now that might cause some distractions for Mississippi State going into this bowl game. What do you think here, Conor Mac?
Definitely, huge for them. But let's just get to it. I'll touch on, instead of the side, the total. I love both these teams' defenses. I thought Mississippi State, especially road games, I know this is a bowl game, neutral field, but they've been great to the under. And we know Illinois wants to run it. I thought their defense was phenomenal all year. Top defense in Illinois. This total to me is too high. This was one that I circled a few days ago. This is the under for me. They want to run it. And on the flip side, I think they can control it. Mississippi State's not going to go crazy. And on the flip side, I think Mississippi State's defense can do well against Illinois. So I like this under 46.5, 46. I think we got a low scoring game here.
Yeah, and as we said earlier in the show, thoughts, prayers, well wishes to Mike Leach right now, and we hope he pulls through this. All right, we've got the Cotton Bowl next up here. Arlington, Texas, AT&T Stadium, Jerry World, as we like to call it, the Tulane Green Wave and the USC Trojans. USC 1.5 point favorites, 62-63 the total. This is probably one of the situational sides that I like the most. I like Tulane in this game because I think when you look at this, the way this sets up for USC going into this bowl game, they lost Caleb Williams playing through injury. It's a hamstring injury from all indications. There's going to be some time off. We are talking obviously Monday, January 2nd, before this bowl game takes place. That's a lot of time. And of course he's the Heisman Trophy winner. Congrats to him winning that over the weekend. But, there's question about whether he plays, and if he does, whether he's 100% for this game. The way USC lost against Utah, that's killed everything for them. They had a chance to be in the playoff potentially, or at the very least in the Pac-12 championship game and the Rose Bowl. All of that went out the window, all of it, losing to Utah in the Pac-12 championship game. Now instead you're here. That's a motivation concern for me for USC going into this game. Not that they're going to mail it in, but it's definitely a concern. And as for Tulane, I think they're fired up to be in the Cotton Bowl. I mean, I'm still got to look at it and make sure this is real life. Tulane in the Cotton Bowl. Tulane was one of the worst programs in college football just a few years ago. And there's been some really bad years for Tulane the last 15 to 20 years. And here they are in the Cotton Bowl. What a season. AAC champions, Willie Fritz. And Willie Fritz, by the way, the one thing that was concerning for me betting Tulane, Conor Mac, some whispers and some rumblings that Willie Fritz was going to leave for another job, for another head coaching opportunity. But he is adamant he's staying around here in New Orleans with Tulane. And you got to believe that's going to make these players go wild with excitement for this game, knowing their coach looks like he's going to stick around. They are a good football team. They are very good in terms, the one thing with Tulane too, and I've talked about this a lot, the run defense at times, has been a little bit shaky for them, I'll admit. But their pass defense has been terrific, and we know this is a vaunted pass offense with Williams. So I think it's a decent matchup for Tulane. I don't trust the USC motivation level after seeing all their dreams come to an end with the loss to Utah. We don't even know if Williams is going to be healthy or play in this game. We know Tulane's excited. It looks like Willie Fritz is going to stay on as coach. I think they're going to be through the roof for this Cotton Bowl. And I don't know Tulane that is. And I don't know if I can say the same thing about USC. I like Tulane here as a small dog. Conor Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, for SC, it's just, can you still get up? I mean, this is still the Cotton Bowl. They should be. But, yeah, Tulane's going to be jacked for this. And I think they can move it on that SC defense. Yep. You mentioned Williams playing. I don't know. It's so far out. But I think he can go, depending on the injury. I like the over, too. I know that's Tulane. I think SC will run it and move it. Some teams were able to move it on Tulane throughout the year, and I think SC will. So I lean over, and I have nothing on the side. I'm going to wait here, on this side, but I think there's points, so I lean over.
All right, leaning toward the over here with the
Jerry's World there.
Yeah,
I think they can get points.
Definitely won't be impacted by any wind or weather. That is for sure when you're talking about the Cotton Bowl there. All right, Citrus Bowl next up in Orlando, Purdue and LSU. LSU 11.5 point favorites, actually 10.5 to 11 point home favorites here, 58.5 the total in this game. And look, a lot of money is poured in against Purdue here. First of all, there's questions about some of their players in terms of opt-outs and transfer portal. Second of all, Jeff Brom has taken off. He's now the head coach at Louisville. Brian Brom, is going to coach this bowl game now, the offensive coordinator. So you've got some coaching instability as well for Purdue going into this game. That's all played a part in this number moving. Obviously, we know speed, recruiting level, talent, all of that is definitely in the advantage of LSU in this game. It's very interesting. Jaden Daniels, we're going to have to see how healthy he is for this game. He was put into a walking boot in the SEC championship game against Georgia. And then Garrett Nussmeier basically had to finish that game in the second half. I don't know if it's a huge downgrade because I'll tell you what, when Nussmeier's come in there for LSU, he's played well. Obviously, Jaden Daniels, in the second half of the season played very well. But when Nussmeier was called upon, he was able to move that football for LSU. I agree with why they bet LSU up initially. I think it's a little too rich for my blood now that it's double-digit favorites. Because keep in mind, LSU opened, 6.5-point favorites here. And now it's up to 10.5, 11. So we've seen a big move. I understand why. But I think if you didn't bet it yet, I'd be a little hesitant to do it, especially not knowing who's going to be at quarterback for LSU. I think Purdue is going to have issues stopping LSU offensively. The over, I think, could be in play here. That definitely would be my lean right now because I do think for Purdue, with Aiden O'Connell and that Charlie Jones, the great receiver, he's got incredible chemistry with him. They could be able to make some plays against that LSU defense as well and put some points on the board. I think LSU will do most of the scoring, but I think that they can make some plays and against that LSU secondary as well, O'Connell, Jones, in that passing game. So over lean for me, 58.5 right now. What do you think here, Connor? Citrus Bowl.
Yeah, seems like a good day. Hey, the LSU defense has not looked good towards the end of the year. So I think Purdue can, initially this line was LSU a little bit. I think we're starting to reach a little too far here. I'd like to see if it moved even more. Then I might jump on Purdue. We saw Purdue hang around. These are some games too. Maybe I'm going to start looking into their first half or differently as we get closer to these games. But right now, I just think a little bit, I lean to Purdue. I think it's too many points. I think they can move it on LSU. Now, LSU probably will score as well. But give me Purdue in the end. And I lean over as well. I think we can just get over this total.
All right. Lean Purdue and liking the over as well, Connor, in the Citrus Bowl. All right. The granddaddy of them all, Pasadena, California, the Rose Bowl taking place not on New Year's Day, again, because of the NFL. New Year's Day is on a Sunday, and that's still an NFL day. So that's why the Rose Bowl is on the January 2nd this year, Monday, January 2nd instead. Pasadena, Rose Bowl, Utah, Penn State, Utah 2.5-point favorites, 52 the total. I like Utah. The money's already come in on Utah. Pick them up to 2.5, 3. I like the way this sets up for them. Now, it does bother me that Dalton Kincaid's opted out. A great tight end. He's had a great season for Utah. They will miss him in this game. He's such a big target in the passing game for Utah. But again, he was playing through significant pain and injury in the Pac-12 championship game. So it's the right move here to opt out. What I like is Utah's back in a bowl game they lost last year in that unbelievable, exciting shootout and thriller against Ohio State last year. And Utah went toe-to-toe, blow for blow with C.J. Stroud and the Buckeyes last year here in the Rose Bowl and just fell short. Do you think that Kyle Whittingham and the Utes and Cam Rising and all these guys that were on that team last year want to go to the Rose Bowl for a second straight year and lose that game again? I don't think so. And I just think, look, I'll take Whittingham in a country minute over James Franklin. And I think just when you look at it here, Rising over Clifford, there's a lot to like. The defense, I think, look, Penn State defensively very capable, but I've also seen Penn State's defense when they've played better teams, better offenses, suddenly not look like that same Penn State defense. So anything less than a field goal, and you could still find a bunch of 2.5s out there right now. This is Utah's game, in my opinion. Better team, better coach. I think they're going to have a crowd advantage, too. As much as Penn State's got a loyal fan base, I remember that game last year, the Rose Bowl. Unbelievable turnout from Utah Utes fans in the Rose Bowl in Pasadena last year when they played Ohio State. So I think the crowd will be out there showing up in droves to support Utah. I think they win this game, and I'll lay anything 3 or less with them. What do you think here, Connor? Rose Bowl.
Yeah, they want to win this one. Probably Rising's last game. He should come up big. Yep, Penn State, again, It's just the last few years. Take care of everybody else. Lose to Michigan. Lose to Ohio State.
Lose the big games, essentially.
Yeah. And the only problem is, it's like, I wanted points. Like, if this was over a field goal, I'd look at Penn State, but you just went through it. Do you want Whittingham or do you want Franklin? Even as a dog, I don't want James Franklin. I just don't know what it is. I just, when I back this guy, he just can't get it done and can't get it done in big games here. Utah, though, I think could score. Penn State can score as well. The Utah defense has some cracks, especially when they don't play, away from Salt Lake. So this total, is interesting. I think it's a little light. I'm going to wait on it, but I think they can get over the number here. We saw last year. I don't think it gets crazy like that shootout, but I think we could see some points here.
Yeah, and a few opt-outs, including Joey Porter Jr. for Penn State as well, a great cornerback. So, definitely keep the Parker Washington, great receiver for them, injured out for the year. So a couple of absences. His bowl track record's not actually that bad. Franklin, 6-4. ATS, it's not bad. Whittingham, very good, 9-5 against the spread for Whittingham in bowl games in his career. And even though they lost to Ohio State last year, they did cover the number in defeat. So keep that in mind. It was an ATS win for Utah in the Rose Bowl last year against Ohio State. Yep. Yeah. It was close, though, even though it was not a straight-up win, obviously, in that game. All right. What better way to finish up this season of hitting the books by saving the best for last here on our final edition of the show for the season, the 2 college football playoff semifinal games right at the end of the show. Let's break them down. We will start with the Fiesta Bowl. You hear them in the background. TCU and Michigan, the first semifinal, Fiesta Bowl. We've got Michigan here currently laying at this point 7.5-point favorites, 58.5 being the total in this game. This one's very fascinating because TCU catching points, it can be appealing. This is the game of the two that I don't really have a strong feel for right now compared to the other one, which we'll get to. We know TCU, though, catching points has been very good. 7.5-point dogs at Texas. They won that game outright. 5-point dogs against Oklahoma. They won that game outright. So the few times we've seen TCU in the underdog role this year, they have gotten the job done. 2-0 ATS as underdogs this year. The Horned Frogs. Feels like you're getting a lot of points with them. There's no question about that. At the same time, though, Michigan's running game, which I don't think has shown one bit that it suffers very much at all, even with Blake Corum banged up down the stretch, as Donovan Edwards has come in and been great. J.J. McCarthy, I think, has been exemplary and gotten much better late in the season in terms of the passing game. His yards per pass numbers grew through the roof against Ohio State and Purdue. Those 2 victories to end the season. There's really a lot to like here about the way Michigan's playing right now. I'm not saying I'll be on Michigan, but I know the money's come in on TCU. I think it's one of those games where TCU, when it opened 9.5, if you wanted to take the points with TCU, I can see it. And you see this kid, Max Duggan, Kendre Miller and all the weapons they have, and the way Duggan just leaves it all out on the field. You say, how can we go against this guy as a underdog of more than a touchdown? But I think there's going to be some concerns about the TCU defense that I had. I didn't love their run defense against Kansas State in the Big 12 title game. And now you're facing a team that runs it even better with the Michigan Wolverines. So I see Michigan winning this football game. That's why I'm not going to be on TCU. In fact, if this line were to be below a touchdown, which I don't think it'll ever get to that point, but if it got to like a 6.5, 6 type of deal, I'd probably lay it with the Wolverines in this game, but it's probably not going to get there. I don't have and the total to me, TCU overs have kind of cooled off down the stretch. They've really slowed down their pace as well. They're not playing with the tempo they did early in the year under Sonny Dykes. And Michigan, is going to be ball control, run heavy. They can have big plays, but they are obviously not going to hurry to the line of scrimmage. So that kind of tempts my enthusiasm with looking at an over once again involving TCU. So it's right now a game, side or total, I don't have a strong feel on. Might be more of a live betting situation for me. Connor, what do you think here? Semifinal number 1, college football playoff, Fiesta Bowl, TCU, Michigan.
Yeah, this could be, of course, these big games. I always think they're great to live bet. You're watching them, everything you can move. But Michigan. I think they win this game. Now that they cover, I don't know. But I think I got to stick with my thing. I think if you like TCU, I might have a piece in it. It's a long ways away, but first half, we've just seen Michigan come out a little slow. Harbaugh, the playbook's a little slow here. And then they turn it on in the second half. And I did it in the last game with Purdue right at halftime, took Michigan. They cleaned house. I think that can be similar here. So TCU's defense, that's the big key. I think they can score here, on Michigan. But their defense, I think Michigan can run on them, like you mentioned, in this one. Man, Michigan wins. I just don't know if they cover. They probably even cover this game. But I'm going to wait on it. But I think I'm going to roll still TCU early here, first half.
I get concerned too because they gave up 31 to Kansas State, 28 to Baylor. They gave up 31 to West Virginia, 40 to Oklahoma State, 31 to Kansas, TCU. The more I look at the TCU defensive numbers, they gave up, points to offenses that, aren't really, I think, the explosiveness of some of like a Michigan, for instance. Plus, if they had played Ohio State, in the Big Ten, TCU, I think they probably would have given up 30 or 40 to Ohio State as well. A lot of their good defensive games were against, some very mediocre, meandering offenses. So, and they really got by because of that. This is going to be a tough challenge, I think, for the TCU defense here. But
Max Duggan, that kid, don't count him out. I'm just saying. So, yeah, don't count him out.
Don't count him out. Warrior mentality. I think your thought process is spot on in terms of if you like TCU, I think the first half might be the better option. We've seen, you're right, Michigan has taken, the first half to really get their feet wet, get into the game, then they make their adjustments, and they've just been a beast in the second half. Just ask Ohio State, just ask Purdue, Rutgers, Indiana, so many examples on their schedule this year where they were kind of mediocre in the first half, and then they just hit the gas pedal in the second half and turned a close game into a blowout. And that's the concern here for TCU, that happens again, and they make this line look short when it's all said and done. So, but again, this Duggan kid, man, he is a warrior. He's got a winning mentality, and he will leave it all out on the field once again here, like he's done all season long. But I think what I might do is TCU first half and then a live bet Michigan. It just makes perfect sense because so many of these Michigan games have gone that way where team hangs around for a half and then it's Michigan putting their dominance on the game in the second half. We'll see if that goes that way again here in the Fiesta Bowl. All right, the Peach Bowl, the second college football playoff semifinal, also taking place on New Year's Eve, Saturday, December 31st, Ohio State and Georgia. We've got at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. We've got Georgia 6.5-point favorite, 61.5, 62 being the total in this game. This one is a game where Georgia, to me, the more I look at them, the more that secondary is, there's holes there. I'm not afraid to say it. There's holes there in that Georgia secondary, and we're starting to see it come to fruition here down the stretch of the regular season. LSU with Nussmeier when he came into the game in the SEC championship game, he was able to move the football through the air a little bit against Georgia. So keep that in mind. They've had some games where they've given up some passing plays, some passing yardage. To concern me just a little bit here when you're playing, an Ohio State team that, while they are off that miserable loss to Michigan, 45-23, again, where it was pretty good in the first half from Ohio State, and then Michigan had another one of those outstanding TCU, or, one of those outstanding Michigan, I should say, second halves where they just poured it on. And I think it leaves Ohio State in a spot off that Michigan debacle where their pride's been wounded a bit, and it leaves them even more amped to make amends. They get a second life. They're still in the playoff. They do have to face this real tough Georgia team. We know how good they are both sides of the ball. But that secondary for Georgia, what I've seen from them at times concerns me, especially when we know that's something that Ohio State can capitalize on. If a secondary's given up a few big plays in the passing game, we know C.J. Stroud and Ohio State is capable, no doubt about it, of taking advantage of it. I know there's people making a huge deal out of the absence of Jackson Smith and Jigba for this game. He's decided not to play, and he was banged up anyway. He was really dealing with a ton of injuries all season long and never got on track. I don't think it's that big of a deal because, he just wasn't healthy much of the season. And it's not like Ohio State doesn't have depth, at wide receiver. They've got plenty of it. So, they've got Marvin Harrison Jr., they've got Emeka Egbuka, Julian Fleming. I mean, they're fine at wide receiver. They'll be fine here in this game. This one, to me, I think is a competitive football game. I'm certainly now the numbers come down to the point where I was initially looking at the Buckeyes, and certainly 6.5 now, a little tougher, but certainly lean to the Buckeyes because I think that passing game is going to be capable of working a little bit here against that Georgia secondary. And on the flip side, I also like the total here, Connor. I think it goes over because I think when you look at it, Georgia, the few times they've had some little chink in the armor defensively, it's been through the air, giving up plays to the opponent, which is the strength of Ohio State. But on the other side, look, we saw what Michigan did offensively against Ohio State, running the football down their throat, making big plays. Georgia's very capable of doing that with their running back tandem of McIntosh and DeJuan Edwards. They've got, obviously, an outstanding tight end in Brock Bowers, Dylan Bell and Adonai Mitchell, very capable receivers. And I'll tell you what, Stetson Bennett doesn't always give the credit he deserves. They're an explosive offense, flat out. They are a very explosive offense. We don't always talk about that with Georgia because how good the defense has been. Kirby Smart's a defensive-minded head coach, but that is an outstanding offense they have. They will move the football. They should have not many issues moving the football here against Ohio State's defense. So I think this ends up going up and over the total here of the 62.5s that we see out there right now for this game. Conor Mac, what do you think here? Second semifinal, Ohio State, Georgia in the Peach Bowl.
Ohio State's got to feel great that they're here after losing to Michigan in this spot. So maybe that helps them. But, I got LSU scored there. I don't know what to make of it because they were up, 28-0, 35-0 35-7.
Yeah, do you lose focus a bit? Maybe if you're Georgia with a big lead, yeah.
Yeah, I remember those defense where there was, a long time ago against Oregon. We thought it was a pretty good offense. Tennessee, which kind of scored a late touchdown. I mean, they didn't do anything in that football game. So I think if the A game's here, Georgia covers this number. If you can get this under a touchdown, there's still 6.5s out there. They bring their focus like they do these big games. I think they cover this number here. But if they don't, because Georgia will score. Ohio State, I've talked about all year. They don't have a great defense. Last year they didn't. They got into the shootout we mentioned with Utah in the Rose Bowl. Georgia should move it on them pretty easy. I just think there'll be a few mistakes, and this Georgia defense will come to play. Best team in the country. I'd lay, if you can get under a touchdown, I'd lay it.
All right, we'll lay it under the touchdown. And that's the thing with I'm not really rushing to bet Ohio State here. It's just my initial lean, just based on the matchup, was, you know what? I think they could make some things in the passing game happen against Georgia's secondary, because if there's one little weaker link of the defense, it's not like they're a horrible secondary, Georgia, but there's no doubt they're better against the run than they are against the pass. No question about that. And that's why Ohio State, I think, can make some plays. It's probably also why, personally, Connor, I'm probably going to gravitate more toward betting the total over than the side, because I think Georgia, to your point, is going to make plays. And Jim Knowles, for as much as I complimented him and the hire of him as DC for Ohio State, it didn't really do much for them against one of the best offenses they played all year when they played Michigan, which did anything they wanted in that game.
Yeah, I just think, too, if you think Georgia gets to the 40s, you're right. I mean, Ohio State probably can get in the 20s. This just gets over. I think you can get over.
All right, there we go. That's the Peach Bowl, and that's everything. We've gone through every bowl game. If you missed last week's show, we did the first part of the bowl previews last week, starting with this Friday's games, December the 16th, all the way through until Tuesday, December 27th. We did all those bowl games last week, so if you missed that show, make sure you check it out, and all the individual game clips for those bowl games. And then we'd start on today's show. We did all the games from Wednesday, December the 28th onwards. So, and we will have, of course, the individual game clips posted for those on the Pub Sports Radio YouTube channel later in the day. Hit the like button on the way out for those of you watching live on YouTube. And we will be back to wrap the show and wrap the season of Hitting the Books right after we hear from Manscaped and Southtown 101. All right, Southtown 101. When you're in San Antonio, Texas, stop in. Great food, drinks, live music, DJs, karaoke, Southtown 101, and manscaped.com. Get 20% off, free shipping with anything on the website with promo code PubSports. All right, it's been a phenomenal season of Hitting the Books. I love working with this guy, Conor Mac. We've done a lot of shows together, him and I, on this channel. It's always fun. I think now we've done this for a few years now, Hitting the Books, and fingers crossed we're back here next August, ready for another college football season on Mondays with Hitting the Books here on Pub Sports Radio. We can't thank you. And the reason why we're able to come back here every year is because Pub Sports Radio's YouTube channel keeps growing. People are tuning in. People are hitting the like button. People are signing up as a YouTube member, which you should be doing, $4.99 a month. Make sure you do that as well to keep this channel going season after season so we can keep on coming back. We appreciate all of you. Hit the like button. Big show, incredible work producing this show, putting the graphics together, the images together, putting the clips together for the individual games. Great job by our guy, Big Show, behind the scenes. And like I said, always great working with Conor Mac. It's been a great college football season. It's been a very good one betting-wise for me. It sounds like it's been that way for CMAC as well. It's been a very good season overall, and hopefully all of you out there enjoyed the show all season and hopefully can make some money with the bowl games coming up. Conor Mac, final thoughts before we sign off for another season of Hitting the Books.
Yeah, it was another great year. I love doing these Monday shows. As great as the Saturdays are, these Mondays is all the clarity right away. Each week, just kind of get them out there. And that's what we do. Hear a lot of bitching from some other people. We just kind of, this is our first thoughts to get these video, on these games during the week. And then we'll come back Saturday and with our final stuff. But chat's amazing. Yeah, sign up for the membership. Shout out to everyone in the chat. I got to hit up Banana and Grapes, Justin, Nunya. Here, Christopher Comentini. There's Cab, no. But let's just tell this here. We'll say it on the college basketball show. There will be no show again this Thursday and Friday. So maybe we'll get Cab. I'm going to get a hold of him. He can jump on. But if not, Chris, just write him on Twitter. I'm sure he'll give you his action if you want it. Picks from Dave, Bama Boy, Real Deal Prime, Jimmy Gomez, my man. Great to see you. Bama Boy, the guy in the back. Shout out to, again, Big Show. As always, thank you, my man. Thanks so much this year.
Yeah,
I appreciate everything you do, my man. You help everything go here. Shout out to everyone. Truth Teller. Everyone, hit the like button for the final time. Let's cash. And shout out to the chat, to all the people. I love the other messages, but I think we've had a phenomenal year. I think we always do. I think we both love college football. It's a strength of ours. And I think overall, you've cashed with us, if you listen to this show. So thanks.
Yeah, I find we've had, they're not going to win them all. I think we had more good results than bad so far this season here. With college football. So that has been very good to see, and we appreciate all of you in the chat. I do want to throw out one last thing before we say goodbye. This is the last show for the season of Hitting the Books as you know it, but we will be back Monday, January 9th at this time slot, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. That's the day of the national championship game, and we will have a special college football pub hub that day at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. It'll be us two, and we'll invite, of course, DJ Big Boss and Big Ragu. We hope they'll be around that day. 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, Monday, January 9th. That is the day of the national championship game, and we will get you set for that game. We'll give you our sides, our totals. Player props are going to be available for that game at a bunch of sports books, so I'll have a loaded player prop card, I am sure, for that game as well. So join us for a special National Championship Game edition of the College Football Pub Hub, Monday, January the 9th, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific, right here on Pub Sports Radio. Definitely looking forward to that.
Yeah, I can't wait. And yeah, we got to get one last time. Big game. You mentioned all the props, but we'll have Boss on here and Doc Ragu. One more time for the big one, January 9th.
Definitely. I'm looking forward to that. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in all season long to Hitting the Books. One final time for Conor Mac. Big show behind the scenes on the ones and twos. I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great bowl season. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. All that good stuff. And thanks for watching us all season long here on Hitting the Books on Pub Sports Radio.
Welcome to another edition of The Barking Dead.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of